Welcome back to another video on my channel. The channel's name is Kutiefly, but my name is Cassie Van Gundy, and I am the author of Cursed Fate. And welcome back to another Writing Wednesdays. Woo! Last week's episode, I talked more about some writing mechanics, kind of. It was a video about how to write a monster. I really enjoyed that one. It's one of my favorite things to do when it comes to my work, because I do a lot of fantasy work or dark fantasy. And of course, that tends to tie in with monster and creature building and character building and things like that. For this week, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This is another advice thing for writing, but it's not specifically about writing. This week's video is going to be called How to Deal with Rejection. This is specifically for writers who are trying to put their manuscript out there or get their work out there. But this could also just kind of apply to anybody who's dealt with rejection recently. So I hope you find the tips in this video helpful, and just keep on watching. Okay, so like I said earlier, these are tips about how to deal with rejection. And this could easily be applied to any sort of creative venture or any sort of entrepreneurial type career or job. These are tips that kind of got me through it and are continuing to get me through it. And I hope they help for you. If you learn anything from this video, or if you appreciate any of the advice I give, feel free to leave a like, comment down below, share with a friend, and subscribe to the channel, because that would be fantastic. But yeah, let's get into it. So right now, in terms of my personal journey, I have my book published with a small traditional publisher, and it's out there, so it's on Amazon and everything else. I've been doing a lot of canvassing and going from door to door to try to get a lot of small bookstore, well, mostly indie bookstores, and some other shops interested in vending my book. This has been an interesting process, and I'm thankful to say that I'm learning a lot on the go. But people were going to say no, people weren't going to be interested, and I had some no's on the road. So I had a lot of no's on the road as well on Monday. Most of the people were really, really nice, and they were very understanding of the fact that I went out with a friend, and I'll put pictures up here. He's also an author, and I'll put his Instagram down below in case you guys are interested in his work. But we went door to door together, and it's basically one of those things where it's like people are admiring you for what you want to do, but it is a hard thing to do, to put yourself out there and possibly hear no's, or possibly just get, there's not a lot of space in this industry when there's already people like giants, basically really big publishers with a lot of resources, or well-established authors with a lot of resources, and you have to compete for space with them. So it is very daunting. It's very scary. But even before that, even before when you're sending your manuscript out to different publishers, like, you most likely will hear no's if you hear back at all. If you want a more in-depth video about what it's like sending your manuscript out there, I will definitely include that in my Writers Wednesdays. So in that process, when you're sending out your manuscript, you will more than likely hear a no if you hear back at all, to be completely honest with you. I obviously got a yes, but I also got a couple no's in that amount of time, and there's still some places that have never written me back. So don't feel bad if this is your case as well. I feel like a lot of creative projects, like, there's always times where you'll hear no's, even if it's one of those things where you're really trying to market yourself on social media and maybe you don't have a really big following. I don't really have a big following. And so sometimes when you don't get that engagement, it also feels like a loss or a failure as well. Or you feel rejected, right? Because you see maybe your peers doing better than you, and you wonder, like, oh, why can't that be me? Like, why can't I be on that level yet? I'm working really hard, everything in due time, right? So here's just some, like, coping mechanisms for that, I think. Or ways to really try to reframe your narrative to try to help with dealing with rejections in whatever form it will present for you. Number one, especially if you're an author, you are doing something that is not the norm. There's plenty of people who write, or plenty of people who want to be writers, but not as many people finish a whole manuscript. So that by itself, like, is an accomplishment, and that should never be downplayed, right? So just, I think the first step is just remind yourself of how far you've come already to get to this point. Even if you're just starting your manuscript, the fact that you have an idea, the fact that you're willing to put energy into it, means that it's special. Anything that's given a lot of effort is inherently special, okay? Even if you're not going to be the next, like, J.K. Rowling or whatever, you put so much effort and emphasis and hard work and love and respect into your own craft, and that's what makes it special. And when you continue to do that, there will be people who acknowledge it, even if it doesn't seem like it right now. You never know who's watching you from the sidelines. And, like, I know that sounds really cheesy. I didn't believe it until I started really putting my work out there. But you never know who's watching you from afar and who's admiring what you're doing. So even if you don't see it in your face right now, just know that it's there. It's being supported. If it's meant to be, it's being supported. And you got this. Just remind yourself of how far you came, and that really kind of helps shield you against blows you might face in the future. Kind of going along with that, like, self-affirmations are also a good thing. I know this might be kind of hippy-dippy for some people, but even just staring at yourself in the mirror and, like, verbally reminding yourself that all the good things that you are, like, who you are as a person, things you love about yourself, things about you love about your own work. If you have a favorite part in your own book, just think about that. And if it makes you happy, if it brings you, like, joy, then yeah, it can make you feel so much better. Like, there's sometimes I'll sit and I'll think about a book, or think about maybe a part that really is special to me that I think is really cool, whether it be just dialogue between two characters, or, like, a whole ass battle scene or whatever. Remind yourself that that's cool, right? That you like what you wrote. I hope you like what you wrote. But there's aspects that you enjoyed during this process, and just dwell on those aspects that you really enjoyed, and remind yourself, like, I did that. And even if it's not about writing, like, if there's something else you take pride in that you think you really value, like, just dwell on that, whatever makes you happy. Like, clearly I like doing makeup, so makeup's a therapeutic thing for me. It's a self-care thing for me. I remind myself, like, oh, you see that blend, girl, you did that blend. You know what I mean? Or just be like, I really value the fact that I'm a kind person. I really value the fact that, I get up every day and I try. I'm a persistent person. I am somebody who cares deeply about animals, or I am somebody who cares deeply about the people in my life. Whatever works for you, but the self-affirmation things is also great. Okay, so I kind of touched on this other one too, but another tip that I have for you, if you're having a hard time with rejection, is also practice some form of self-care. This got me through basically all of 2020. I probably talked about this on my channel before, but I was someone who was trying to enter the workforce during the year 2020, when everything shut down. And I remember I applied to hundreds of jobs and got rejected from, like, almost every single one. Well, pretty much every single one. I'm not gonna lie. I got to, like, maybe 4 or 5 interviews, but that's about it for the entire year's worth of work. It was just a hard time, and it was a hard time for a lot of people. But I started taking that rejection so personally, it wasn't even funny. I, like, straight up thought, like, I was a failure at what I was doing. So a lot of ways, like, I turned to writing because it was a comfort for me. And writing itself can be a form of self-care for a lot of people. But then when it's your job, there's parts of it that are difficult. Like, I still love writing, and it makes me feel so good after I write. I feel so powerful. It's just dealing with the other stuff, like the more businessy stuff, that is difficult for me. So things that were your self-care, when you make it your business, there might be aspects of it that you don't like. And so it's important to also have other avenues where you can express yourself, or relax, or treat yourself outside of what you do. And I think that's really important for creatives to remember, because, like, there is such a thing as burnout, and it could be really daunting when there's something that you thought that you love to do, you're getting burnt out on. It's a frustrating feeling. So I really recommend even basic self-care stuff. Like for me, that is a bubble bath. A bath will solve all my problems. For me, baths are like prayers, um, because I've been doing a lot of my spiritual journey as well, not to bring religion into it or anything like that. But for me, I feel like I am doing a spiritual act when I take care of myself because there is divinity in me. For the mere fact that I am alive. And that I am a powerful person, a powerful being, and your body's a temple. You might as well worship it, right? So for me, bathing is not only like a self-care thing, it's a spiritual thing. It makes me feel so good. I love just being in hot water, and soap and candles and the whole nine yards. I love that. But that's for me. So self-care can also look like, let's see, I mentioned makeup. Makeup is a self-care thing for me. It's not even about masking because I know some people perceive people who like to wear makeup and be like, oh, you're just covering up. No, it's like a form of art because I can just put a video on or put music on and not think about anything other than colors. And that's great, right? Even if I use basic colors like I'm using today, you just kind of like sit and blend, and it's muscle memory, it's muscle movement. That's what helps me zone out, is like something that's just kind of like repetitive and something that feels natural. That could also be like if you like to work out, if you like to do yoga, if you like to eat healthy, if you like to, bake or cook for yourself. I think a lot of things that sometimes we forget to tend to our own garden, and because we're so focused on everything around us. But just take some time for yourself, like literally. And when I mean like self-care, it's like guilt-free self-care, which can also be hard for a lot of people. It's hard for me, but do not feel guilty for taking time out just for you to take care of you. That's really important too. And I feel like even when we take care of ourselves physically, it can help. I mean, it's not an end all be all, but it can really help take care of us emotionally and mentally too, so that when we do have to deal with something hard or something rough, we are already prepped for that, if that makes sense. So yes, practice self-care as well. There's this kind of like little last bits of information. Sorry if this is so generic, but persistence is muscle memory too. And what do I mean by that? So think statistically, right? If you approach maybe 100 stores, it is statistically very unlikely that all 100 stores will say, yes, we're going to sell your book however you want it, right? That probably will not happen, especially if you're new to the industry and starting out. There's some people who are very, very, very open to helping out local authors, and they're amazing. Network with them. You will find them. But for the most part, you're not going to hear a yes everywhere you go. And even if you don't hear a yes right away, you could talk to somebody and it might become a yes. You know what I mean? But that's going to take work on your end as well. And it's just kind of just looking at it objectively too, and detaching it from the personal, because yes, like this is your baby. This is your manuscript. This is something you spent maybe years working on, and you want it to be great, and you want it to sell out, and you want to convince other people that it's great. It's important that you recognize that like there is a business side to these things. It is a product, and you want people to have faith in your product. But especially right now with COVID and everything else going on, I think a lot of businesses or like small bookstores and everything, are worried about losing money. There's issues, at least what I can speak on right now. There might be issues between yourself, your publisher, and a bookstore you're looking to vend to, where nobody wants to lose money. So the issue of returns comes up, like if a book will be refundable or not. The issue of discount pricing will come up, and that's just all a bunch of negotiations. This is what I'm dealing with right now. But even in spite of that, just hearing a no, like, and just remember that statistically, a no will happen. Um, it's just a fact of life. You will hear no at some point in time in your life, and it sucks. And so you can do a couple of things. You can either take it for face value and, process it, and just kind of be like, well, I tried. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to quit too if you really just don't feel like you want to invest a whole lot of energy in that when you hear that no. But also, you can try to be like, okay, well, let me try again. You know, that's where the persistence comes in. Or maybe try to make concessions, do some negotiation, try to do your best and make the best of that situation. Or you can completely pivot and try to do something new or try to come at it in a different way. I know that I got a no from a store that, again, it just wasn't a right fit. It was more of like a spirituality type store. And the minute I said young adult, there's a stigma against young adult, y'all. I don't know why, but the minute I used the adjective young adult, they just kind of shut down and they're like, no, no, no. So I'm like, you know what? I don't necessarily want to work with you. But then I found other stores that were more of my niche. There's some, especially around Boston, there's like fantasy board game type stores where you can go play D&D and everything else. And they had books there ranging from all sorts of ages, but a lot of high fantasy or a lot of like dark fantasy was put in. And I'm like, okay, these are my people. This is my tribe. And, you know, if I rely on them as a network, I don't necessarily need this other person that gave me a no, right? I shouldn't dwell on that one person who gave me a no when I have all this going on over here as well. So I chose to pivot in that sort of situation, you know. I don't know, it's not necessarily giving up. But you just kind of know what environment's right for you. You know what I mean? And it takes practice to figure that out. But, you know, persistence is a muscle. It is practice. You have to really just work at it and work at it in order to get better at it. It's not so much of getting cold and numbing yourself to feedback. That's not what it is. It's just the more often I think you hear yes or no, or you put yourself in situations where you might get rejected, hopefully it's good practice for you to know how to anticipate that in the future. You know, it's like when you do something new for the first time, you're going to be bad at it, right? I'm bad at what I'm doing. Like, I'm trying though, right? So again, to me, just being completely transparent with you guys, I walked into one of the stores and I went up to somebody assuming that they worked there, and it turned out to be some 14-year-old, and her mom was just cracking up at the fact that I thought this 14-year-old could be in charge of anything. And so, of course, I was embarrassed, and I'm like, oh shit, I clearly don't know what I'm doing. But, I just turned it into a funny positive, and I said, you know what, you just have this aura about you that's like, you just know, you just have this authoritative aura about you, like, you know what you're doing, and I try to, like, gas them up and, like, just play it off, and it was all funny and fine and dandy, So it's, like, important not to necessarily cave. You're going to make mistakes. I made stupid mistakes. I still make stupid mistakes, but you don't learn without making mistakes. And it's kind of like you don't learn without that sort of rejection either. Not everything's going to go your way. It's important to remember that. But it's also important to be kind to yourself and kind to others in that situation as well, And ultimately, you could try to persist, but there's only so much you can do to change somebody's mind as well. And if that's not the space for you, it's not the space for you. And you try to go to a different avenue to find where you belong. You know what I mean? So yeah, I hope that kind of like helped you. I don't think this is like a rant necessarily. But yeah, just me talking about tips and tricks and maybe some things that could help you. If you want dedicated videos, like I said, to, how to send your manuscript out to different publishers, if you're interested in getting published traditionally, I can totally make a video on that. Or if you want more like sale pitch type videos of like, how do I go up to talk to somebody about selling my book? That is something I'm currently in the process of learning right now, so I might not be an expert on. But I can at least convey like my experiences and what works and hasn't worked for somebody who's writing in my specific genre, which is dark fantasy, sort of young adult, but also they have swear words. So, yeah, how young adult is it? I don't know. But anyway, if you're in my wheelhouse and you want to learn from my experiences, go ahead. I will be very transparent with what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully I'll put more content online for you guys in the near future as well regarding writing things. So yeah, if you liked all that, be sure to like the video, comment down below, share with a friend, and please subscribe to the channel. Please, please, please. It would help me out a whole lot. Until next time, thanks. Bye.